Blind Date is a really great Golden Girls episode. This is the 12th episode of the 4th season of the Golden Girls. It's directed by Terry Hughes, and as always, there will be spoilers from now as I go through the episode and share some thoughts. There are two parts of the narrative, so I'll talk about each of them in turn. One focuses on, well, everybody else. The other one focuses on Blanche. And the one with Blanche I thought was mostly well done, but we'll get into that in a moment. First of all, Rose is coaching this kids' football team and she asks Dorothy for help, and Dorothy agrees as long as Rose isn't too competitive. And the great thing about Rose is that she comes across as quite meek and mild, but when she's passionate about something, she really gives it her all and occasionally becomes quite aggressive. And it's nice to see these different sides to the character. And the kids are all lining up and getting their weight checked because they have to apparently be a certain weight in order to play. And it was a little uncomfortable having these children being weighed, but I understand why it happens, assuming that is something that happens in children's football. And unfortunately, Rose and Dorothy both get sick, and Sophia ends up having to take over, and she's talking to this boy who was, I think, 2 pounds under the weight minimum. And of course, Sophia being very short as well. I say that as somebody who's only just over an inch taller than her. And it was nice that she could relate to him and he could relate to her and had a nice conversation. And then she gave him a giant sandwich, which would hopefully put the 2 pounds on him. And I can't imagine, well, I was going to say I can't imagine it would be great to eat that much before a game, but actually that did prove to be the case because he got a cramp. And we conclude this part of the narrative with Sophia parading the boys into the house after the game. And she says, "Make way for the victors." and Rose asks if they won, to which Sophia said, "No, we lost and we all changed our name to Victor." It's such a rubbish joke. It's so corny and I absolutely love it. So really thoroughly enjoyed that. I thought that was a really fun part of the narrative. And then we come to Blanche. Blanche is going on a date and she stood up and she meets somebody else who was stood up. This is a character called John Quinn. He's played by Edward Winter. And just as Blanche is leaving, he asks if he can invite her out on a date, and it turns out she'd already written her phone number down on a napkin. And he comes over to pick her up for this date, and we, the viewer, know that he's blind because we see him getting his stick, his folding stick, as he leaves the bar, and Blanche doesn't know this. And I have to say, yet again, I'm impressed with how they handle a delicate subject. All of the jokes are, of course, at the expense of, well, Blanche, really, because she still doesn't know he's blind. Everybody's introducing themselves to him, and Sophia introduces herself as Blanche's gorgeous 22-year-old cousin, which I thought was funny. It was very clear, obviously, to John that wasn't the case, and Blanche comes in and asks him how she looks and if he's blinded by her beauty, and then Sophia asks if she wants a glass of water to wash down her foot. And Blanche has to try and pretend that she knew he was blind. Of course she did. And they go out on their date, and it really seemed like things were going really well. And then Gallagher calls. This is the person who'd originally stood Blanche up, and she decides that she wants to go and meet him. And it's not immediately clear why. It seems like Blanche has a problem with John Quinn being blind, but it's not really addressed immediately. But then Blanche comes home and she talks with the others and she explains what the problem is. And I never thought of this, and it's actually really interesting. Blanche explains that she's always relied on the way she looks for confidence. She feels confident in her appearance. It's how she attracts people. And if John Quinn can't see her, she's basically wondering, well, why is he with me? Why does he like me? Why does he want to date me, if not for my looks? And it shows that actually she's really insecure without her looks, which we knew already. We kind of have covered that many times, but it almost seems like she doesn't think she has anything else to offer. And it was really interesting. I apologise if you hear my cat meowing. She wants fed, so I will wrap this up and give her food. And she actually goes to meet with John, and she has a conversation with him, and generally it's quite pleasant. But she said something that I don't like. She said to him, she's standing next to him, thinking of approaching him, and he can tell that it's her because he can smell her perfume. And she says to him, "For a blind man, you're certainly observant." I didn't like that. I don't like that statement because there are other ways of observing things other than through sight. He can observe what he hears. He can observe what he smells. And I didn't love that sentence, and nothing was done with it either. She just said it and they moved on. But it was well handled. We ended on some comedy there because he was describing his picture of Blanche in his head, and to see if she was listening, he said that she has a big butt because she's a music lover. And he was actually meeting a woman called Elaine who comes in at that point, and just as Blanche is leaving, she tells John Quinn that it looks like Elaine's an even bigger music lover than she is, which is cruel, but also funny. It's a really good episode. I think for the most part it handled the Blanche's response to dating a blind character very well. I thought it was very insightful, explaining why she felt the way she did. As I said, it might have been obvious, but I didn't see that until she explained it, and I thought it was really, really fascinating. And again, the jokes were all at the expense of mostly Blanche, which was definitely the right approach. And the whole football story was very well handled. Really enjoyed it. Loved Sophia's role as well. So, needless to say, I think that Blind Date is a pretty great episode of The Golden Girls. Definitely one that I really enjoyed.